Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello and welcome everyone. It's Friday night and you're listening to Paranormal Review Radio with your hosts, Anthony Agati in New York.
And me, Lucy Liebfried from Chicago. What a great show we have for you tonight. Our chat room is up and running, so feel free to ask us any questions. And we're also opening the phone lines tonight, so call in with your questions. The number to call is 661-244-9831. And press 1 to ask your questions on air. Now, if you lose your sound on your player, just refresh your page or log back in. Blog Talk can be a little testy sometimes. You can also send us an email at paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com and check us out on our Facebook page.
Before we begin tonight's show, I wanted to just take a moment and reflect on some sad news that happened today. And I just want everybody to sort of create a little moment of silence right now. And whatever faith that you have, whatever you hold dear, if you can just say a prayer for maybe about 30 seconds. I just want to take a moment of silence right now. Everyone here at Paranormal Review Radio, our hearts go out to all the parents and family members of all the children and faculty that were taken away shortly today in Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut. So our hearts and prayers go out to everybody out there. Thank you all for that. Okay, so for tonight's show, picture this. You wake up on Monday morning, and as you turn on the TV to catch the weather and traffic, you realize that during the night, the world has gone into a global catastrophe that is now snowballing into an ugly war between citizens of every country. News reports are showing country after country rioting, looting, brutal combat among neighbors. The news anchor reports that the tragic reports are growing tenfold, and it looks like they will not be on the air very long. As the anchorman bids farewell and good luck, you realize this is real, and you have to do something. But what? Are you prepared? Do you have food and supplies in your home to last for a significant amount of time until hopefully this global chaos subsides? Well, our guest tonight has thought about the scenario hundreds and hundreds of times and is prepared for such a catastrophe. Preparing himself and his family for such a global disaster has made our guest tonight one step closer to security and peace of mind. Jay Blevins and his wife Holly have been featured on National Geographic Channel show Doomsday Preppers, in which they show how their family and neighborhood are prepared for such things like an economic collapse that they feel is a very real possibility. Jay has also written 2 books, The Last Fall, which is a heartfelt and warming novel about redemption, and the second book is called Survival and Emergency Preparedness Skills, a comprehensive survival book that will prepare you mentally, physically, and spiritually, as well as provide knowledge, steps, plans, and supply ideas to survive and thrive in a natural disaster, terrorist attack, economic collapse, social unrest, or a pandemic disease. In addition to writing, Jay is a speaker, prepper, father, husband, believer, and a dreamer. Jay has worked as a deputy sheriff in the Washington, D.C. metro area, where he served as a patrol and SWAT officer. For the last few years, he's been working as an analyst at a consulting firm, and in his spare time loves to speak and teach people about emergency preparedness. He has a degree in Christian ministries and has served in many different churches and ministries over the years. He's passionate about his faith, his family, prepping, and reaching people about important life issues through his writing. Hopefully we don't experience any large-scale disaster, but maybe the information you hear tonight may help you out in any situation, big or small. Let's prepare to be prepared. Please help me in welcoming Jay and Holly Blevins to the show. Hi, Jay. Hi, Holly. How are you tonight?
Good evening. How you doing tonight?
Hi there. How are you?
Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Doing very well, thanks. Good to be on your show. Thanks for having us tonight.
Great. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Jay and Holly. Lucy here.
Hello, Lucy.
Hi, Lucy. How you doing tonight?
Hi, I'm fine, and we're so happy that you're here with us. You know,
thank
Anthony and I both saw the episode that you were both on National Geographic's Doomsday Preppers, and I have to say, you know what, it was pretty intense. It almost seemed like a practice SWAT team exhibition. How did you all get involved in prepping?
Well, I'll start with that one. I've sort of had a prepping mindset about since the year 2000. I guess that's when it got more serious for me. I've been interested in the topic since I was younger. I've always been sort of an outdoors type person, doing hiking and camping and things like that. And so, you've got to have some of those skills to spend overnights in the wilderness and things like that. But in the year 2000, I became a deputy sheriff in the D.C. area. And that sort of was my wake-up call, I guess. You guys mentioned the sad news that happened today, and so for me, it was a wake-up call just to kind of see, I guess, some of the things that people, unfortunately, can do to each other, and as far as the criminal mindset. And so that's where it got a little more serious for me. But I would say the September 11th attacks was sort of the most important wake-up call for me. Through the years, of course, since 9/11, we've had a lot of other, major events that have taken place. We had the 2004 tsunami and earthquake that killed, over 250,000 people in Indonesia. Of course, we had Hurricane Katrina, the earthquakes in Pakistan, and all of these events. And so, I began to look more closely at them to do my own research and really wonder if I was prepared in these types of events. We had certain things around in our area that, took the power out for a few days and things like that. And so those events really got me going seriously on research. But then when I became a father, I would say that's the thing that really made me recognize the need to be prepared, because I've got 3 kids. They're 9, 7, and 4, and I feel I need to be able to take care of them in any situation. And so seeing all of these things happening, I guess sort of one after another, I started doing my own research, and around the 2008 time frame started putting my thoughts down for my book that just came out in November, the Survival and Emergency Preparedness Skills. And so really was a combination of all of those events that got me thinking about it and then starting to prepare for different things.
Is it difficult to live as a prepper, both for you, Jay, and for you, Holly?
I don't think that it's difficult. I think that it actually makes life a little better for all of us as a family, because I feel, when I go to sleep at night, I feel peace of mind knowing that I have the things that I need, and that, my husband is going to do what needs to be done in order to take care of us all. So I think it makes it easier.
Most American families spend around $500 a month on life insurance, on homeowners insurance, on car insurance. This is money that we spend for things that haven't yet happened. So for us, to answer the question, is it difficult to be a prepper? Not at all. We don't spend a lot of time and money on this stuff. It is an important part of our lifestyle, but not difficult at all. In fact, I'm very passionate about, obviously written the book on it, but I'm also very passionate about telling others about it. And so for me, I do think it actually enhances our quality of life, because it takes away that stress. When Hurricane Sandy was coming through recently, I had several people ask me what I did to prepare for that. And my answer was nothing. I sat and waited, and if the power had gone out, which it didn't, I would have just flipped the generator on. And so I think it gives us a little bit more of a peace of mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? you're a person in law enforcement, so you clearly have an edge over other preppers. But have you noticed that you and your family have what many other preppers don't?
Well, I think as far as just to clarify, I'm not in law enforcement anymore, but having had that training definitely gave me some experience. I would say the one job that I've had that's really prepared me more for anything in life was that experience dealing with different people. But I think the main thing that I stress, and that's actually the very first thing I talk about in my book, is mental preparation. The supplies are great, to have, the different things, food, water, cold weather, warm weather clothing, protection, things like that. Those are all important, but the most important aspect, and I think it's the thing that we focus on, and I definitely feel that the law enforcement helped to prepare me for this, is the mental preparation. It's just so important because so many people, if they don't have the will to survive, if these situations happen and, if you're going to curl up into a fetal position and give up, well, you're probably not going to survive it. But if you have that mindset that says, I don't care what's coming, whatever's out there, whatever happens, I'm going to be ready for it. I'm going to survive it. And I've actually had people ask, why would you want to survive in these terrible times and then try to survive through the hardships of it? And my answer to that is, like I said, I've got my wife and my 3 kids and others that are dependent upon me. So if I'm not here, who's going to take care of them?
Mm-hmm. Well, on that note, Holly, before you and Jay were married, have you ever thought about Doomsday and the idea of prepping?
I don't think that I thought necessarily about a doomsday, but I grew up in a family where my dad was a firearms instructor, and he also is a Vietnam War veteran. So he always raised us to have at least, we weren't preppers, but he definitely taught us how to have a mindset of survival. He would teach us gun safety, teach us how to use the gun. He would go over scenarios in our home and say, if our home is broken into, this is what you are to do. This is where you're to run. This is who you are to protect. You're to protect your smaller, younger sisters or your mother or whatever the situation would be. We also, in some of our homes, had a specific designated area, kind of like a fortified room that my dad would say, you're to go to this room and you're to bar everybody in there. And I'm the eldest daughter, so he did lay a lot of that on my shoulders to be responsible, to get everybody safe and sound in a situation like that. So although we weren't preppers, I don't even know if they had that term back then. I definitely had, just a mindset of survival at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
So Jay, your book is called Survival and Emergency Preparedness Skills. Now, it's one thing to be a prepper and live your life with you and your family and everybody around you as a prepper. What made you write the book?
Great question. Thanks for asking it. A few years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, as I was getting more serious about prepping, I actually started putting together emergency preparedness kits for people, basically bug-out bags or bags they could keep, in their car or in their workplace, with some of the essential, 72-hour items, some food, some water, a first aid kit, a flashlight, things like that. But again, the gear really isn't going to keep you alive unless you know how to use it, unless you have that mindset. And so I started doing some research on my own just to see, what types of things people could do to survive in different situations, but mainly focusing on the things that have actually happened. Another important part of that mental preparation is the reality that these things can and, in fact, do happen. We can talk about it later, but going through a list of some of the catastrophes since the year 2000, and it's pretty staggering if you actually look at each event and how many people were affected or killed by those events. And so I wanted something to be able to give to people that wasn't just the supplies. I wanted them to have, sort of a handbook. And so I started writing things down just sort of as a small booklet, and as time went on, continue to add to it. And then pretty much as time went on and I started into my writing career, I felt like I needed to put this out there to really share with people sort of the foundational things about emergency preparedness. So that's how it started, and things really just came together in this last year with my publisher and then with the show and some of the other things that we've done. And it's just been really it's been an amazing time to hear from people all over the country. In fact, when a lot of these things are coming, when these hurricanes are coming around, I'll get emails or phone calls from folks saying, hey, thank you so much for that kit you put together for me, or thank you for your book. I feel like I'm okay. I don't have to worry about anything. And so, that means a lot to me as a writer and just as somebody that's passionate about this topic.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, proper mindset, and that's, I believe it's the first chapter in your book. How can an average Joe like myself mentally prepare or get the proper mindset for actually starting to prep?
Sure, great question. Again, the very first part of that is having the will to survive. Again, there are some study after study shows that whether it's sports or whether it's different illnesses or other things that people do in life, the folks that have the attitude, the sort of that can-do attitude, are usually the ones that are going to triumph in these types of situations, because the mind is a very, very powerful thing. And it's so easy to get discouraged. So in these situations, again, I believe the most important thing is you've got to have that will to survive. And I think most people that start looking into this have that will to survive. They don't, want to just give in. And so the next step as far as the mental preparation is looking into the things that can happen. In other words, having at least an open enough mind to say, okay, let me do some research and see what kinds of things have happened in the past that could affect me. Because, in fact, since the year 2000, over 1 million people have died in terrorist attacks and natural disasters and social and political unrest and diseases. Okay, so that's just since the year 2000. Millions more have been affected by those things. And so basically having an opening mind to saying, okay, these things can happen. And then last, for mental preparedness, and this is really important as well, is that you are, in these types of emergencies, going to see things you're not used to seeing. Our mind isn't used to. Look at today's events from today. We're not used to hearing a story about a man going into an elementary school and killing children. That's the last thing we want to hear about. It's the last thing we would want to deal with. And so in these emergency situations, you're going to see people suffering. You're going to see people hurting. You're going to see possibly people that have been killed. So if you've never dealt with those types of situations before and you haven't prepared yourself mentally, who knows? Some people on the job, dealt with a lot of that stuff as a law enforcement officer. Some people throw up. It's a natural reaction. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Some people faint. Again, nothing to be ashamed of, but you've got to be able to prepare yourself in advance to say, okay, I might see things that are very disturbing. I've got to press on through those things.
Right, and I'm noticing just in chat right now, people are asking about, what doomsday are we talking about? And I just wanted to clarify, this has nothing to do with that whole thing about, the Mayan 2012 thing. This is something that's more real than that. This is, natural disasters, terrorist attacks, like you were just saying, economic collapse. Any of those things are doomsdays, and that's what everybody should be concentrating on. I live in New York, and recently we were, as you were just mentioning before, we were introduced to Hurricane Sandy, or, as they're calling it now, Superstorm Sandy. And, we were pretty lucky. Outside of not having heat or electric for 10 days, we pretty much were okay. But in that time, I noticed a lot of people with short fuses and tempers for the simplest of things, like getting bread at a store or even, filling up their gas tank in their car. It was unreal to watch this. And I noticed this after about 2 days after the storm had passed. And that was such a short amount of time. For people who don't realize things like this can happen, like you were just mentioning, how much average time do you think will elapse before sort of like that civil unrest happens in times of catastrophes? And what should we do in that time to generally prepare, and what should we be first thinking about?
Sure, another great question. So difficult to say how many days you'd have to survive on your own, because it really is going to depend on the disaster. I mean, even if it's something that I'm not going to say we're used to these disasters, but, we do get hurricanes here in the States. We do get earthquakes and things like that. it could be, several days up to a week before anybody can reach you. In fact, the opening for my book, I interviewed a person who survived Hurricane Andrew, and they had to survive for weeks, I think 5 or 6 weeks without electricity, and even longer, they still had to boil their water and things like that. But the most important thing about it was the first 72 hours, because after that 72 hours, the authorities were able to get in and sort of try to get a semblance of order in place. But it's in those first, few days, those first few hours and few days that are so critical. So, Anthony, to answer your question, it's hard to say how long it takes people, to lose it. I'll give you a couple of examples, though, and one of the major sections of my book is on protection. And, again, we can talk about Sandy later on and some of the realities that came from that with the looting and some of the stuff that happened in Queens and the Bronx and Coney Island. But a couple of examples. Folks, I think, we're an immediate gratification society. If we want to find a product online, you just do a quick Google search and there you have it. Boom, you can have it shipped to your house sometimes in a day or two. We're used to our routines where we're going to the local coffee shop to get our latte. If we don't have those things, you're right. People get very irritable very quickly under normal circumstances. The best example I have for you from the last year is in December of 2011 and then later on the spring of 2012, a major shoe company put out a special Air Jordan sneaker. Okay, and when this was released, I believe the first time around Christmas time it was released, December of 2011 in Detroit, Michigan, and people were literally fighting and assaulting each other for a stupid tennis shoe. Then in the spring, they did it again, and it was released in Orlando during, I think it was All-Star Week for the NBA. And they literally had to call in the Civil Defense Unit, the riot squads, because these people were fighting over a stupid tennis shoe, okay? So this is under normal circumstances. So as you mentioned, because you just lived through it, Anthony, imagine a person who hasn't had their basic needs met for a few days. They're cold, they're hungry, they're tired. And so there's two groups of people in these emergency situations, in these doomsday scenarios, that are the most dangerous. The first group are people who would commit crimes anyway, that commit crimes, I guess, under, quote, normal circumstances, when there's no law enforcement or they're spread too thin to be able to come and help in your situation. How much worse are those criminals? And then second, folks who wouldn't normally commit crimes, but people, again, who are suffering, who are tired. They're watching their families suffer, watching their families go without. And so I think in those situations, people are even more volatile and ready to fight. In fact, after Hurricane Sandy came through, there were stories of people attacking the electrical crews because they were working on, say, someone else's street and not their street. What good is that going to do if you attack the guys working on the power? But it's an unfortunate reality in these type of situations.
Perfect.
Well, you know what? When Anthony was going through that ordeal, myself, I live in Chicago, so I had a hard time getting information about what was going on, and I really became frustrated with our local news station because most of the news was general. It wasn't very specific, and sometimes it was incorrect information. So should we rely on local or cable news broadcasts for information on disasters, or is there something else that we can get our info from?
Great question. And see, unfortunately, that's going to be dependent upon the emergency as well. I met some folks that also were from the New York, New Jersey area that lived through Hurricane Sandy about 3 days afterwards. And I asked them, I said, hey, is what I'm seeing on the cable channels, is that accurate? And they said for the most part it was actually worse than what we were seeing on TV. And so, to some degree, yeah, you can. I mean, most credible news organizations are going to try to put the information out there, to the best of their knowledge. But, as you see in any type of situation, like today's news, things are sketchy at first. Not all the details come out, and then over time you get better information. That's why it's really important as part of your supplies to have, your first line of communication, backup communication. But, what if the phones are down? What if the internet's down? How are you going to get information then? We have we have different two-way radios that we can communicate with others in our network. We also have radios like crank radios that don't need batteries. You can actually just crank them up to get the information, and so have different ways to get that information. But great question, and what it boils down to, I guess, is you trust them to a certain degree. Trust the information to a certain degree, but try to verify it on your own through those other means.
Okay, Holly, as a mom, I know how it feels to want to protect and secure your children in cases of disasters or hardships. Now, do you ever fear that you have not done enough for your children, or as a family? Are you secure with what you have accomplished so far in regards to prepping?
Yes, I'm secure. You can't go from 0 to 60 in 1 second. You have to start somewhere, and it's not like we're trying to just accumulate more and more and more and more and more. It's more of a process. It's more like just thinking through things and saying, okay, do we have a way for our children to have clean water to drink? Check. We have that. We have that one. And do we have warm clothes for them? Check. We have that. But the children grow every year, so I don't hoard 10 years worth of clothes because my children are going to grow. So every few years I'll switch out the clothing so that will fit them, and their new shoes so that would fit them. But I feel pretty secure in what we have, and you can't be prepared for everything, but I feel like we are prepared for most things.
Okay. Now, Jay, as we're not psychics and we can't foresee what the future may throw at us, if, for instance, a huge natural disaster were to strike your home, won't that affect your prepping inventory and the security of a home base?
Great question. As you saw on our episode of Doomsday Preppers, we actually have a network that's set up. At this time, we've got about 15 families, about 75 to 100 people that are involved, and to be honest, more wanting to join every day. So we believe strongly, and again, as you saw on our episode where we do certain things to the house so that we can sort of barricade or shelter in place, we do believe in sheltering in place as the first line of defense because you've got the home field advantage, you've got your supplies there, it's territory you're familiar with, things like that. However, as you said, there are certain circumstances that are going to drive you from your primary home or residence or shelter-in-place area. We actually have some train tracks that run not even a mile from our house, and so let's say there was a train carrying some chemicals or something through, and that spilled and we had to evacuate. We've got our bug-out bags packed in advance with all of the supplies that we need, or a lot of the supplies that we need, I should say, and we can get the car loaded in a few minutes and get out if we need to. So we have different locations within a few hours area with different people that are involved in our network that we can go to in the event that our place is somehow compromised. We also have another location beyond that. It's sort of our rally point, or sort of the last stand, if you will, where we've got a lot of natural resources. It's a bigger piece of property. It's wood. It's very remote that we can go to. And then we also have a bunker we can go to that's about 300 feet underground that we could get to in the event of a serious. No, I'm just kidding about the bunker part. We don't have a bunker, but we have a lot of different places. We have contingencies for these types of things, including areas that are farther away than the region that we're in, if we have to go to a different area. But it's important to have that in place in advance, because you may not be able to communicate with other folks in your network, and so everybody needs to know where they can go if they can't go to, say, the primary and then the secondary and the tertiary places. They've got to know where all of the spots are.
Now, Jay, in your book, you talk about gaining as much knowledge about the town or city you currently live in first to be able to better prepare for any type of disaster, such as, the weather history, industrial or nuclear reactors or factories. Where can an average person find this information? I mean, is there a better source to gain this information other than the Internet?
There's a couple good sources. I would give a couple of sites first because that's probably the easiest place to go to. If you're not, you'll have to end up going to your library or going to one of your. Well, let me start with this. Events in your area, yes, very important to find out about. In fact, when I tell people that there have been 17 major disaster declarations in my home state, in the area that I live, since the year 2000, to include terrorist attacks, earthquakes, which we're not really known for here in Virginia, hurricanes, blizzards, things like that, they're very surprised. So what I did when I was doing my own research is I just went to FEMA's website. They actually have a section. If you go into their website and look up disasters, you can put your area in and you can actually find out what disasters have taken place in your area. You can also go to, they have a site called ready.gov where they've got some information, and then the Red Cross has great information too on their website. But if you don't have access to the internet, you can't get to that information. I talk about a lot of different things in the book. You can talk to some of the local neighbors. If you're new to the area, there's a neighbor that's lived in the area, for 10 years or so. They're going to be able to tell you what kinds of things have happened. You can go to local law enforcement, the fire department, talk to them. Number one, they're a great resource because they can tell you, specific things that they've responded to as calls for service. But number two, they can also tell you if they have sort of an emergency plan set up already. And then last, you can talk to the utility workers in your area. Again, they're the folks that are going to come in and have to restore the power, restore the gas and things like that in the event that these things go out. So those are all good resources to find out about the events in your area.
Okay, I got to ask this question, and I think you mentioned this earlier. In this day of modern electronics, many people rely heavily on them to what they like to call surviving each day. Do you feel that the younger generation today may have an even harder time surviving in times when the electric and power goes out for more than just a few days than, say, someone who's in their 50s or 60s?
My honest opinion is yes. My father and his generation, my dad's about 65, and they didn't call this stuff prepping. They didn't call this stuff emergency preparedness. This was a part of their everyday lives. They churned their own milk into butter. They slaughtered their own animals. They raised their own crops. So for them, this wasn't prepping. My mom is an immigrant from Vietnam. This is everyday part of her survival, growing up in a conflict zone. And so yeah, I look at my parents. These are the original survivors. They don't, it's second nature to them to be able to do really any of this stuff. And yeah, I look at my kids and some of the folks that are younger, and I wonder, if I want to figure out where to get where I'm going, I don't even have to have a GPS anymore. I'll just pick up my phone, plug that address in, and boom, I've got the the GPS on my phone or whatever, or Siri will come on and tell me how to get there. So, yes, I do think the younger generation is at a disadvantage if they don't take the time to learn these skills. Our kids, I'm sure the question always comes up, how involved are your kids? And to be honest, we try to shield them from a lot of this stuff. They play football and soccer, and we take them on vacations to Disney and stuff like that. We try to keep them sheltered from this stuff, but at the same time, we'll make it fun. Like, we'll go hiking or camping. I'll teach them how to start a fire, or I'll teach them how to filter water, or maybe how to navigate with the stars, or to navigate and not get lost in the woods. So, yeah, we do teach them those things because, yes, I absolutely think that the younger generation, if the technology's on, they'll blow me out of the water. They'll be able to find the information much quicker than I can. But if for some reason they can't get to it, yeah, there's definitely, you've got to have the backups. You've got to know, how many people do any of us know that can actually pick up a map and read it, let alone a topographical map with those blue and red lines? What do those mean? So, yeah, I do think without the additional knowledge, and I will say overall, I think through the years, and I think this goes to ancient cultures as well, we have definitely lost a lot of knowledge that, the generations before us had. Things like just being able to tell, hey, if the weather report doesn't come on, that old saying about, being able to tell if it's going to rain or not, things like that. So I definitely think that in order to be prepared, you've got to have a backup with the older technology, if you will.
Well, I mean, obviously, as a prepper, you pretty much have to keep up with current events and news and everything. So, okay, right now there seems to be a lot of news and talk about the economy. The fiscal cliff is becoming more like a fiscal noose that's going to hang us all in a few weeks. Do you think that an economic collapse is sort of inevitable?
You know, out of to do the National Geographic, the Doomsday Prepper show, you know, as preppers, yes, we want to be prepared for a lot of the different stuff that's going to happen. For me personally, the thing that I think is most likely is this economic collapse, at least affecting us to the point where we'll have to change our lifestyle. Some people are already doing that if they've lost their jobs and things like that. But I do think it's bigger than that. I don't know. I can't predict if our I use this term lightly, our leaders will be able to get their act together and do something. If they don't, I do want to be ready for that. But look around the world right now, not just the last few years, but you know, look at what's been going on in Greece. You know, the rioting and the destruction of property over, you know, just trying to get their financial situation figured out. Look at the UK in 2011 and the summer and then towards the fall. You know, Trafalgar and other neighborhoods were literally burning to the ground, and people couldn't do anything. The authorities couldn't get in because there was so much social upheaval. Right now, actually, this last quarter, the third quarter for the UK, for the Eurozone, they've just slipped back into a recession. So yes, I think there are indicators. We've got some great talent in our prepper network. We've got one guy who, you know, for his life has studied you know, economies and when they've collapsed and things like that. And he has seen a lot of similarities between things that have happened, like, say, Germany in the 20s and 30s and what we're going through now and other places. And so I do think it is a very real possibility. But even though we haven't had a full collapse, we're already looking at situations that affect our day-to-day lives. Let me give you a couple of examples real quick. In July of this year in Lane County, Oregon, they released 100 prisoners from their jail system because they can no longer afford to pay for the people and to pay to take care of these folks. These are accused killers and other criminals that are now on the streets simply because there wasn't enough money. In Camden, New Jersey, which has one of the highest crime rates in the country, in August of this year, they fired every one of their police officers. They had 400-some police officers. They're all gone. I believe they supplemented with, I guess, the local sheriff's office, but, you know, you're getting a less experienced sheriff's office coming in. You lost all of your experience, and you've got a lot less people on the road. And then last, just in October, O'Brien, Oregon, their budget cuts were so devastating that they have 5 law enforcement officers patrolling 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So that means 16 hours out of every day and 2 full days out of the week. If you pick up the phone and dial 911, nobody's going to show up to help you in those situations. And so the economic hardships we're having, they're already affecting us. So even if there's not a global collapse, which I do still think is a possibility that we have to be ready for, there are situations where we're already being affected by that.
I am packing up as we speak, and I'm moving to your neighborhood. Holly, this may be a little morbid, so forgive me for asking, but have you given any thought to how you would continue if for some reason Jay is fatally hurt during a catastrophe?
You know, I don't like to think about that because I really do consider him my best friend, and he's my rock, and he's our protector. So I hope and I pray that nothing does happen to him. Although, because he does, you know, he works, you know, closer into D.C. and you know, having gone through 9/11 together, I do have that worry and I do have that fear often that him working so close to D.C. that there could be something that could happen and he would be unable to get home to me. Having thought through that, I know that at that point I would become my children's main protector. So although he is the main person who does all of this and all of the prepping and, you know, training us and everything, it's important for me to have the essential skills that I, in his place, could take care of the children in that case. So,
two things I'd like to add. Number one, I did not pay her to say any of those things, first of all. But number two, it's why we have our network set up. You know, the network of folks we have, great group of people, and we have to be able to trust each other enough so that if something happens to any of us, the network can step in and help out. And so that's a lot of the reason why we have that set up.
Well, you know, it's a great compliment that she feels that way, and it's reassuring, and it's just wonderful. But you know what? I do want to go to the Doomsday Prepper episode, and you actually gave a good recipe for pepper spray and using a child's water gun to disperse it. Now, do you have any other cool techniques like that you can share with our listeners using common household items?
Well, I got to say, first of all, make sure you know the laws in your area, because there are different laws in different areas as far as what you can do to defend yourself. What I like to say is, in general, it's the reasonable person rule. In other words, what would a reasonable person do in any given situation to defend themselves? And if you can articulate that and justify that, you're probably okay. Just want to throw that out there. Yeah, you know, the pepper spray was, you know, there is obviously commercially available pepper spray out there. It can be a little more expensive, so I just wanted to try that recipe out. And, you know, I went online, did some research, and the pepper spray itself actually worked very well. The delivery system, that water gun in particular, didn't work as well. So we've got to come up with one that, you know, it works a little bit better as far as the delivery. But, you know, I like to have, first off, to answer your question, I like to have the tools here that enable me to defend my family in any way that I need to. In other words, so we talked about that circle of force on the show that you saw, you know, whether it's an expandable baton or the pepper spray or a taser, things like that. I think those are just invaluable tools in these types of situations, and so we have a lot of those around. In fact, on December 4th, I was just on Access Hollywood Live. You can go online and just Google my name and Access Hollywood Live, and I do a demonstration of a lot of those different weapons. But as far as other little things around the house, you know, we don't have dogs or anything like that. I would say, you know, some people are averse to having firearms and things like that, and you know, you do have to have a way to protect yourself. You know, the taser is a great weapon, a little more pricey. But you know, we don't do a lot of other, you know, homemade stuff, but you've got to improvise with what you had. And I mean, you know, if I only had a few things around the house, I'm not saying I'm Jason Bourne or anything. I don't do the roll up the magazine and beat anybody with that. but you know, we just improvise with what we have, and then the main thing is to try in advance to have these things prepared already.
Okay. Well, you know, you did mention that you've tried to shelter your kids from this, but how did you actually introduce the idea of doomsday prepping to your kids? And do they have an understanding of this concept?
Holly, you want to answer that one?
Sure. I mean, for the most part, we just kind of try to, I guess, ease them into the idea of it. We don't, you know, sit down and explain to them that the economy might collapse, because they wouldn't understand what that would even mean.
Right.
So, but I would say something like, you know, we have an alarm system. So I might say, okay, if you ever hear the alarm go off, you know, this is what you need to do, you know, or if we're ever, you know, if we're ever in a mall and you start hearing gunfire, this is what mommy wants you to do. I want you to get behind me, or I want you to get down on the ground. So we might go over, you know, a scenario with them in a very simple way, and mostly at their age right now, it just comes down to them being able to listen to what mommy and daddy tell them to do. And I think that's the most important thing, is that they're able to just listen and follow directions right now. But we do like to take them out and, you know, and camp and start fires and stuff like that.
You know, that's an interesting question to ask again. Going back to what happened today, Holly picked up, one of our kids was sick, so she was already home. But we have two in elementary school, and she picked up our son early because of what happened, and it was one of those kind of somber nights here at the Blevins house. And when I got home, I just we've never really gone over that type of situation again. I mean, who thinks that this type of horrible thing is going to happen in their area?
Right.
And so, I mean, it's kind of a sad reality. So when we got home, we talked about it. So after dinner, we just sat the kids down, and again, they're still pretty young, so we try not to do this kind of thing, but the reality of the world we live in, they need to know about strangers and that danger, and they need to know about, if there's a fire in the house. And unfortunately, after today, we actually went over some different scenarios and what they can try to do. From what I've heard, what happened today, though it was a tragic situation, I hear the teachers and those in charge, did an amazing job of keeping other kids from being hurt in this situation. So my hat's off to them. And then after that, we got together and we prayed for those families and for the folks and that lost loved ones today. And I think for them it's just sort of an introduction to some of these realities that they're gonna learn later on. We try as best we can to keep them from it, but again, when stuff like today happens, it's almost like, hey, it's there, it's going on. You need to address it because they're going to be hearing about it anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Well, there is a saying that it takes a village to raise a child, and I really guess the same can be said to survival. It must take a group of people working in unison to increase the odds of survival. So how do you keep your group of survivalists together and in sync with the methods and techniques so it works like a well-oiled machine?
Sure, great question. So for our network, we actually have, and we're still implementing some of these things, but we meet about every 6 weeks. Before it was sort of a mix between sort of a Bible study and talking about prepping, and now it's basically gotten to a more formal place where folks have actually given a commitment. They've gotten, they've committed to get certain supplies and have certain supplies in place at different locations. So we have a whole plan in place. We have a leadership structure, in our network. We've got different people that have different skills, leading certain teams. So, for instance, we've got one guy who's great at hunting and trapping, and we've got another person that, knows that can go in the woods and really point out, almost any plant and tell you what's edible, what could be used for medicinal purposes. We've got a nurse. We've got a firearms instructor. So we've got different people that have these different skills that lead up. We've got about 6 teams in the network, and everybody has a specific job or team that they're on, sort of primary and secondary roles, and we have basically redundancy set up in those teams so that if something happens to, say, one person and they aren't able to get to where we are, or whatever, or God forbid are hurt or killed in an emergency. So we've got other people that can fill in those slots. And so that's how we try to keep it together, and we do require that people make it to a certain number of meetings. We train about every quarter. Every few months we'll do, defensive tactics, firearms training, survival skills, and things like that. And we actually do run, as you saw on the show, we do have exercises and things to sort of practice. We don't do those all the time, but a couple of times a year, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Okay. You know what? In doing the research and looking up all this info, I did notice a lot of comments from people all over the Internet that seem to say, well, these doomsday preppers, they're crazy, they're living in constant fear all the time. So what do you say to these critics, and what are they not realizing that they should be?
Sure, great question. With the book just coming out, just by the way, which you can get on Amazon or you can go on jblevins.com to get that. With the book coming out, with the show we just did, and we're doing a lot of press and promotion for the show as well, I've met people across the country. I've been getting emails. I've been meeting, of course, a lot of folks in the media. And, I do hear that a lot, and that question comes up. Well, people might think you're extreme. People might think you're kind of crazy. And I would say at least 90% of the folks that sort of have this idea that it's sort of out there or extreme, once I start talking to them and giving them, well-researched facts, I don't talk about the zombie apocalypse, okay, and I don't talk about, some of that other stuff that might be in pop culture right now. I try to stick with things that have actually happened And most of the people will say, this doesn't seem so far out there now. You seem like a normal guy, and now I'm going to go shopping. So most folks that I come across, they do receive it. Again, if you put a well-researched message out there, they receive it well. There are going to be critics. There are going to be kind of haters out there and things like that. But there is so much interest. In fact, Doomsday Preppers is the #1 show on the National Geographic Channel right now. To me, that's amazing. I mean, I grew up watching specials on, the Amazon rainforest and, specials on the pyramids. And so to know that Doomsday Preppers is their #1 show, in fact, it's one of the highest-rated cable shows right now, it really says something. And I think people are very curious about what's going on. And so for those folks that might think, hey, you guys are out there, you're extreme or whatever, this is what I will say. I sleep really good at night. Sleep very well. My wife's not so much because of my snoring, but I feel confident knowing that I'm prepared for these situations. And one of the other main topics I talk about in the book is spiritual preparedness. And we're people of faith. We're Christians. We believe that hey, we have that faith to fall back on as well. And so I kind of feel like we've got our mindset in place, we've got our supplies if we need them, and we've got our faith to fall back on in the worst case scenario. And so to those folks, I would say, hey, I sleep really good at night, and when the next emergency comes, I've got my gear ready. I hope you survive as well. But I encourage people. I don't say that to be smug. I really don't. I'm really passionate about convincing people that they need to at least do a little something. And the one main thing I share with those folks is that FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, they're the folks that are supposed to be in charge in an emergency, okay, a huge situation like Hurricane Sandy. Well, first of all, when Hurricane Sandy came through and then the nor'easter hit right after that, Anthony, I'm sure you were familiar with that one, there were reports of people going to the local FEMA offices, and literally there was a paper note stuck to the door that said, FEMA office closed due to weather. So I think that speaks volumes to, the local, the state and federal governments. They'll help if they can, but in these situations they have to take care of their own and their own operations first. But the second thing I would say is FEMA themselves, go on their website, do the research. They recommend that everybody have at least 72 hours to a week's worth of supplies on hand. And so if the agency that's in charge of taking care of us in these situations says you need to have supplies on hand, you probably should have some supplies on hand.
Yeah, one of the things that I think people are realizing now, because I just noticed it on the news just a few days ago, and it's already been, 5 weeks since the storm, that people are frustrated with the amount of paperwork that you have to deal with FEMA, and they just give up completely. I mean, it's down to just the information that you have to give to FEMA in order for them to react, which, I mean, I totally understand. I totally get it that they need to have, the correct information before they start to, dish out money or dish out, roofs over their heads. And so they have to get that paperwork correct. But, I think there needs to be some sort of overhaul of this system to make things quicker. You can't keep these families out there in freezing cold weather that it's been here without a home with their children. I mean, it was really amazing to see that. And I just want to remind everybody that if you have a question for Jay or Holly, you can call in at 661-244-9831. That's 661-244-9831. But, Jay, I read somewhere that approximately 3 million Americans right now are doomsday preppers. What do you think has contributed to the growing number in this country?
Great question. I actually think that number is higher. I think there's a lot more folks. And, I had a reporter come to the house on Wednesday night, local newspaper. And as we were talking, she said she does a lot of these things, but it's just a normal part of living sort of in a more rural area. And so I think there's some preppers out there that just don't call themselves preppers because it's part of their lives. But, I think I do truly believe that we're living in uncertain times. I don't mean to be a harbinger of doom and gloom, but starting with the economy, the fiscal cliff that is supposedly coming. I mean, it's a very real thing that could affect you and I. Since the year 2000, think of all the major disasters that we've had, and I realize that we've had, natural disasters all throughout, human history and the history of this planet. But it does seem as if there's sort of an increasing frequency. Some people would attribute that to global warming, the weather, things like that. But, 2011, we had a record number of tornadoes in the United States and a record number of people that actually died in those tornadoes. And, these are sad realities of the times we're living in right now. Couple that with, I'm not saying I subscribe to the Mayan Doomsday prophecy, but there's a lot of interest in things like that. And I think people in general, let me give you an example from a few years ago. Holly and I were living basically at the foot of some mountains here in Virginia, and there was a really bad thunderstorm coming through. And I've never seen anything like this. There were some horses. There was a farm across the street and some horses that before the storm hit, they just started going crazy. They were running in circles, and clearly they knew something was up. Shortly after that, and I've never seen anything like this, I don't know if that's the right word for it, but a whole bunch of deer ran up our street. We're in the middle of this is like a townhouse neighborhood. Clearly they knew that something was coming.
Right.
I truly believe we're at a point where we're whether it's because of the politics of our age, whether it's the economy, whether it's the things that are going on in nature, because of all these things, I think people are sort of at a heightened state of alert. Me personally, again, my personal faith, the Bible talks about a lot of pretty bad things that could take place, at some point in the future. And so, I think people are just they're looking for answers, and I think they're looking for ways that they can survive in these types of things. And, hats off to the people that are at least doing the research. But it is absolutely, it is a growing topic. People are they're both concerned and curious about what's going on.
Well, you mentioned this before, and on the cover of your book, you state to prepare mentally, physically, and spiritually. What do you mean by spiritually?
Sure, great question. As a law enforcement officer, one of the most difficult things I ever had to do was what we called a death notification, and that was, obviously, let's say somebody lives in this state and had a relative that was killed in a car accident. Well, the authorities there aren't going to just call the person at their house and say, hey, your dad died in a car accident. They send the local authorities there so that there can at least, be a person there. They do it in the military as well when someone dies overseas in combat, things like that.
Right.
One of the things that we always had available in those situations, we either had a chaplain or some type of counselor there, either with us or readily available, because study after study has shown that people in those types of situations want and need something bigger than themselves, a higher power to fall back on. And I talk about a couple of studies. I'm not going to quote the studies now, but study after study has shown that when folks get cancer or a terminal illness or a serious illness in the hospital, study after study has shown that those that have a faith that they can look to, a higher power, survive many more times over than folks that don't have anything that they believe in. And so there is a certain power in believing in something. And again, for me personally, the sad reality of some of these emergencies is that you might not survive it. Like I said, since the year 2000, over 1 million folks have died. And so if you're not prepared spiritually, if you're not ready for eternity, then you're really going to miss out. And so for me, it was very important. I became a Christian in 1992 at age 15, and so I believe it's really important to be ready for eternity. And again, for me, it's having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I believe that's the way to heaven and the way to understand, what's going to happen afterwards. And so that's what I believe is true spiritual preparedness. And again, I think it's so important to have that for these situations.
And, after a while, I remember hearing about this. I think it was probably in early of 2002 that right after 9/11 happened, there was a record number of people going back to the church. And it was that, I guess it was the comfort and the hope that there would be something better, or it was just something that they can hopefully gain, I guess, comfort and I guess maybe lending an ear for whatever issues that they may have that was revolved around the 9/11 incident. And so I think what tends to happen is after time progresses, people sort of, I don't know, I guess the only word I can think of is go back to being quote-unquote normal, and they sort of stray away from it. But I think the faith part, they need to hold on to that. They need to keep it close to them, because it is what will get you through it. It is what people will rely on all the time, but tend to not have it in the forefront of their mind. And to I guess to gain that spiritual awareness and spiritual strength, it's I think as heavy as having your bug out bag and as having all of these other items around you. It's just as equal. That's my belief.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I actually, it's the very last thing I talk about in the book, and I think it is the most important, again, because the bug out bag might fail you. It might get left behind, or you might not make it through that thing. And so the question is always, do people think, I've got time to make peace with God, and in reality, they may not have that time. So yes, absolutely sustains them through those situations, but also is there, it's the ultimate just in case.
Right. Lucy, you there? Lucy, did I lose you? I guess I lost her. Okay. I actually we mentioned this before. I wanted to ask you both a question, and this may sound silly, so forgive me. But what are your thoughts on the Mayan end of the world hype? Do you feel there is validity, or is it just plain, hogwash?
I'll let Holly go first.
Okay. I have to admit, for the past few years, I have definitely tuned into National Geographic Channel to watch the different Mayan Doomsday prophecy specials and episodes and stuff like that. It's very interesting to me. However, personally, I do not believe, they call us Doomsday preppers. That's the name of the show, and I love the show. The show is great. But I have to say that, when we talk about Doomsday, I don't think that, and especially in regards to a Mayan Doomsday, December 21st, actually December is my birthday, December 21st. So I'm hoping that I will be around to celebrate my birthday. But I say that in joking. But no, I don't think that there is a Doomsday, if you're referring to it as a specific day. Doomsday is more, a series of events that could happen.
Yeah, I think it's a great question because a lot of folks are talking about it. And again, I love the fact that the show's out there because it's getting people talking about it. I had the pleasure about 3 or 4 weeks ago we were doing some press and promo stuff, and we had a professor from the University of Kansas by the name of John Hoops. He's an anthropologist and archaeologist who studied the Mayans, and gave a great presentation on this idea. So let me say, first of all, number one, that I don't want to make fun of or belittle anybody else's beliefs in this, in what they think is going to happen. But I will say that from the stuff that I've looked at, and then from this gentleman's research, it appears that this really wasn't actually something that the Mayans believed in. In fact, some of the apocalyptic stuff may have come later on. I guess I'll put it in my words, not his or the other experts, but it appears that some of the tie-in from the Mayans and this whole December 21st first thing in their calendar is more of an urban legend than something that they actually believed in.
Right.
I'm not an expert though, so that's just from what I've seen. I will say this though, and I do believe that ancient cultures such as the Mayans, the Chinese, the Babylonians in the Middle East, I do believe that in the course of human history, I don't know if it was the Dark Ages and again, this is not my area of expertise, this is just my personal belief, I think that we've lost some things in the progression of human history. And what I do think about the Mayans is that they had, from what I understand, their calendar was actually more accurate than the calendar that we use today.
Mm-hmm.
They were, I use this term loosely, we might not consider it, but they were astronomers. They had years and generations to look at the stars, to watch things that were going on. And so, when they set up their cities and when they set up their monuments and when they had their festivals, I mean, they were very, very good at not necessarily predicting, but knowing when certain things were going to happen as far as in the stars, because they watched it for a long time. Right. I think we've lost some of that knowledge, and I think we've lost some of what they had. And so I think we can learn, from some things, from looking at the stuff that they knew. And really the biggest thing I would say is with, this date approaching, at least folks are asking really important questions and looking into it. And so for that, I'm thankful.
I think and I loved what you just said. I just think that and I mentioned this before, the modern technology age that we're living in right now, I think it's creating our population, or, just the people that are on this planet, I think a little bit lazier than where we were many, many years ago. And I think it's about time that everyone just goes back to the basics. And, I've made this comment many, many times, even in my personal life and on the air, is that everybody should start to just look up. I think everybody that you see walking on the streets or, in the offices or sometimes in their car when they shouldn't be, they're looking down and they're looking at these electronic units, whatever they may be, and they need to start looking up. And I think that's where we've lost it. And just as you were saying, we need to go back to how the Mayans were thinking and how they did their research. Well, what did they do? They didn't have anything electronic. They looked up. And they searched into the stars and they did their own research without having anything like what we have now. And they were far better, I think, than where we were at. So I think that's absolutely awesome that you just said that, Jay. If there's one thing that you would like our listeners tonight and your readers to take away from your book, what one thing would that be?
Well, I would really encourage folks, don't take my word for it. Go do the research on your own. No matter what the topic is in this book, whether I'm talking about the mental preparedness, the supplies, or the spiritual aspect of it, don't take my word for it. Be a skeptic, be curious, and go and do your own research like I did, because I think what people will find is that, these things obviously have taken place. They could take place again. And again, it's for us, we look at it as insurance. It's not something that we think about every single day. We have it as, part of our lifestyle, but I don't think about my life insurance policy every day. I certainly will when the bill comes, maybe. But, I don't dwell on those things. I just have them there just in case. And so, I'm not going to minimize it and say, again, that it's not an important part of our lifestyle, but we don't dwell on it all the time. In fact, I don't have a lot of time to do that. And so just do the research. I would say, take the time to do the research, check out my book. It's not that expensive. Go online and do some other research and just come to a conclusion for yourself. At least that way you can say, hey, or they can say, I've looked into it. I've made my own decision. I'm going to go do my own thing and keep my head in the sand or whatever. To add to that, though, what I would say is there is kind of a fine line between being paranoid and being prepared. I don't want to cross that line into paranoia. Some might say, well, Jay, you've already done that. Hey, they're entitled to their opinion. But we look at this very practically, and we try to approach it from a rational standpoint. And so, don't cross over that line. Don't let it take over your life. But just have these things there in case you need them.
Okay. So what's next for the Blevins family? Do you have any new prepper projects to start, or possibly another book in the works?
Ooh, great question. Holly, you want to answer that first?
Well, we're just really working on our skills. I know for myself right now, I'm just doing some studying on my own to gain some more medical skills. I'm a former dental assistant, so I at least have some basic knowledge of first aid, CPR, taking care of sick people, and stuff like that. But I've been on Amazon recently. I've been purchasing books on learning all different kinds of uses for medications and prescriptions and what they're used for. I've been researching actually midwifery and learning how to become a midwife and just the kind of skills and knowledge that I might need in an emergency situation. And I think there's other people in our group that are doing the same thing, just learning more skills and honing the skills that they already have.
Yeah, I do, Lucy, plan to put another book out at some point on preparedness. This is more of a foundational guide. I'd definitely like to get into more of sort of the details, the nitty-gritty of survival and emergency preparedness. So, but I've also got a couple ideas for some novels and things like that. So the writing is definitely going to continue. As far as our prepping, I think we're at a pretty good place right now. There's always room to grow, but we are going to expand our network a little bit. We've got some folks that we're going to probably be bringing into our network in the new year, just to bring in some more skills and sort of that safety in numbers. And so really, as time goes on, we're going to keep an eye on the news. We're going to keep an eye on things, and hopefully, there's a lot of uncertainty sort of in the Middle East and Egypt right now again. They just had the Arab Spring, but now there's more stuff going on. And then, of course, there's always, it seems like there's always something going on with Israel and Iran or Syria and those types of places. And so, yeah, I definitely keep an eye on those things, and I'm going to try to put more stuff out there just to get people informed. So that's kind of our future plans. But outside of that, we plan to enjoy life and live it to the fullest, and hope we never have to use any of this stuff.
Right. Well, you know what? Where can our listeners learn more about your mission, and where can they get your book?
Yes, they can get the book anywhere books are sold. It's on Amazon. It's available on the Kindle. Barnes & Noble. You can get it on the Nook. Actually, it may not be available on the Nook yet, but it will be soon. They can go to my website, which is just my full name, jayblevins.com. They can get a lot of information about me. I've got another book. My other website is thelastfallbook.com. And again, the title of this one is Survival and Emergency Preparedness Skills.
Excellent. You know what? I want to thank you both for coming on the show tonight. It certainly was eye-opening, to say the least. And you can check out more about Jay and Holly Blevins on their website, jayblevins.com, and you can get Jay's book, Survival and Emergency Preparedness Skills, on Amazon.com or oakterra.com. Jay, Holly, please be safe, and may God bless you both. We love what you're doing, and we can't wait to hear more. Have a great night and a great weekend. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Holly, for coming on the show tonight. It was really great, and I hope everybody really takes heed to what you were saying. So, I want to second that. Get his book, Survival and Emergency Preparedness Skills, on Amazon.com, and hopefully maybe we'll have you both on again soon sometime.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It was great talking to you both, and God bless you.
Great. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
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 Lucy, are you there?
Yeah.
When we were going through Hurricane Sandy, in the very beginning, before it even came here, I had even posted on my Facebook, joking about, I wonder if I've got enough, cigarettes and junk food. And it wasn't, and I think I had mentioned this before, and it wasn't until I started to see some of the weather reports, because the storm came out on Monday, and it wasn't until that Saturday and Sunday right before that the weather men and women that I was noticing on the news stations, they were pretty serious, and they kept showing these visuals and the comparisons of what last year's hurricane was in comparison to the size of what Hurricane Sandy is and how it was forming. And so I think that visual itself sort of clicked. And that's when I went out and I started to get batteries and check where my flashlights were and check my radio, candles, matches, lighters, like all these things that I probably wasn't going to take care of. And I started to do that. And I put it all in this little tote. And I said, okay, what's the worst that can happen? I'm not going to use it. Hurricane Sandy passes us. Nothing really happens. I'll put the tote back in the closet, and that was it. But, lo and behold, 9-10 days later without electricity and hot water, it really came in handy. And I think it was about maybe the 4th or 5th day, I started noticing that the stockpile that I had created in this tote was getting low, because I actually shared it with my sister and my brother-in-law and their family. And so it really got me thinking that it's something that you should really think about, because, again, and I'm not even talking about a doomsday scenario. I'm not talking about, a terrorist attack or, some sort of economic collapse or, any kind of sort of pandemic disease that may come. I'm just talking about a storm, a hurricane, or, a little tornado or whatever it may be that may come that may just, you personally, locally, and intimately may be affected by it. It's not something that the whole world would be affected by, but it's something that you would be affected by. I think it's a great idea to have it. I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's insane to have a bug-out bag. I think it's a good sense of security to have, especially if you have a family. And I don't have a family, and so it's kind of weird that I'm thinking about this, and a lot of people that I know who have kids are not. And I noticed that after, that the storm had hit us, that folks didn't have anything. And the craziness that just came about, and as I was mentioning before with Jay, that just after 2 days, people were going nuts because there was no food and stuff. I mean, I remember going into the supermarkets, and they were empty because, excuse me, because, trucks and deliveries couldn't make it in, or because there was that whole gas issue that we had, they weren't able to get the gas, to get the trucks, to get to the stores. And so it's sort of this domino effect that you don't really realize until it happens to you. And so maybe this had to happen to me for me to realize, you know what, I got to get myself in gear. And if nothing happens, then so be it. Just like Jay was saying, I hope nothing does happen and you don't have to use it. But what's the harm in actually knowing that knowledge or gaining that research and having those supplies around handy? I think it's something that everyone should do, even if it's just something that can hold you over for a couple of days. I'm not saying hoard and create a room of and stockpile 6 months worth of food and supplies and everything, but I think it's a good idea to have something like a quote-unquote bug-out bag, or just something little that could probably sustain you, that are sort of the bare essential needs, just to have in the house.
Well, you know what? Growing up, my dad was so awesome. Now that I think about it, a lot of the things that Jay and Holly talked about are common sense.
Right.
Whether you have kids or not. One thing that my dad taught me, first off, like with the old cars, he taught me how to change a tire. He taught me how to look at an engine and to know what happens. What happens if you're driving to work and your car breaks down? Do you even know where to look? Do you know where the hood is? Do you know where these things are? One of the habits that I picked up, I always have an extra pair of shoes in the car. I always have an extra coat. Raising a son, we always got, he plays sports. So one of the things that I've always had in the house, and to this day, I always have first aid supplies. I always have bandages. There's just common sense things. Water. I don't drink water. You know that. But I've always got water in the house, just in case. Let's say anything, like you said, a tornado. One of my favorite TV shows in the world is Survivor. And I look at these people that go to this island, and one of the things that strikes me every single time, not quite a few of these people don't even know how to start a fire. Let's say something happens. You go camping. You decide, you want to start a fire. Could you start a fire without matches and flint? There's so many things that I think we take for granted. And like you were saying with the texting and looking at your cell phone, looking up is really important. I mean, simple little things. I mean, I've lived in a trailer. Okay, so when bad weather came around and there was a tornado, there was a plan. If you have to evacuate, okay, what are we going to do? Where are we going to go? How do you protect yourself? Just common sense things, and it has nothing to do with doomsday, has nothing to do with the end of the world. It just happens to be everyday life. So this whole thing that you went through, trust me, I really was frustrated because I was worried. I couldn't get information, and then I knew your cell phone, it was hard to charge, but then again, it was like I wanted to make sure you were okay. So little things. I mean, these are just simple things that happen, and it was just a hurricane. I don't want to say it was just a hurricane, but these are things that happen, and common sense. Let's say for some reason food supplies can't come into Chicago. You can't run down to McDonald's and pick up something to eat. How many people can actually scrape together a meal with what they have in the house? Things like this. All of a sudden, we've always one of the things I always have is Pedialyte. I don't have a baby, but you know what? It comes in real handy sometimes. I have a tendency to get dehydrated. It comes in real handy. Certain little things. It's common sense. Then the other part about that I really, really liked that they mentioned is faith. You have to believe in something. There has to be something that is there, whether you pray to God, to Allah, to the goddess, whatever. That faith is what sustains a lot of people. And it's not just, I don't think it's just natural disasters or something like that. It could be anything. It could be illness. It could be stress. It could be anything. But as long as you have a belief in something, it makes it a lot easier to go through. This thing that happened today, faith probably is the biggest thing that will help these poor families get through. And there's no explanation for what happened. There's no reasoning for what happened. But faith will get them through it.
Well, there are atheists out there, and so, some people don't believe in that. And I don't think you're saying that everybody has to have a faith.
No.
I think it's just a matter of whatever you can use to sustain you, mentally. I think faith can help, but if that's something that you don't believe in, then maybe find something else that can help sustain you. Either it's a hope of something that will get you through it. We're not saying that you have to read the Bible, or you have to be of Jewish faith or anything of that nature. I think it's just a matter of finding something within yourself that will give you that strength and that sustenance to keep you going, because in times of that nature, and we don't know this, there's maybe a select few around the world that have gone through really horrific times for a long period of time. And so I think there's only a small percentage of people that can actually, tell us how they got through those times. But I don't think people realize what's really needed to get you through, because, and as Jay was saying before, you go 3-4 days, 5 days, 2 weeks without electricity and hot water, you start to go crazy. You really do. You start to go really mental. You get frustrated. There's that anger and that depression, and that's what will drive a lot of people to do things that they wouldn't normally do, like steal or even kill, to make sure that themselves or that their family is secure. And so those are the folks that are losing themselves in the moment. And if you try and really, stop for a minute and think about the surroundings and where you're at, and come above it all, you will survive. If you succumb to it, no matter how many supplies that you have in your home or wherever you're at, is not going to help you, because you will break down. There will be a breaking point, and you will either turn the wrong way, or you will not survive and thrive through it, because mentally you have gone overboard. You've gone onto the deep end. And that's when what we're talking about is something within you that can keep you going, either it being faith or either it just being something else that you look inside yourself and above to, and I'm not talking heaven above, but I'm talking above you yourself, that can help you get through it. Otherwise, I know it because I felt it when I was going through that whole ordeal, and that was only 2 weeks. That was only 2 weeks that I had to deal with that crap. And I know how I was feeling during those times, and I can see the difference now after the fact, how my mental state was. And it was hard, and it was rough. And I think people need to start thinking that and not have it happen to you first and then to go through the ordeal. You should really sort of set it out now, and that's what Jay and Holly are talking about, is, the proper mindset, getting your mind into that idea that things like this can happen, like the issues today that happened in Connecticut, and anything, and even earlier in the week in I believe it was Oregon, in the mall. And so, things like of those natures. And again, we're not talking about, the end of the world December 21st. We're talking about things that can happen to you locally that you need to prepare yourself mentally, physically, and even spiritually, as Jay was talking about. Did I talk too much, Lucy? Did I lose you, Lucy? I think I did. I don't know what's going on with your phone. So what do you guys think out there? I mean, I'm seeing the chat, and I'm noticing a lot of things that you guys are talking about. And I'm not sure if any of you folks out there that are listening and in chat right now have ever thought about what would happen if a quote-unquote doomsday occurrence happened in your city or your town or even just your neighborhood. Have you really thought about what could be or what could happen? And one of the things that I remember when we were reading Jay's book and when we watched his episode on Doomsday Preppers was that he did mention a lot about doing research locally. And I find that to be really, really important, that you need to really look at locally what happens in your town and in your city weather-wise. What's the weather history like? And you can also catch to see if there's a pattern, if there's an increase or a decrease in the pattern of bad weather. And when weather happens, how does that affect your area? Do you have a lot of surges? Does the rivers in your town or city or neighborhood tend to swell up more than normal, and has that increased or has that decreased? Are there any preparations that the city has done? And so you can really get a sense of, okay, what do I need to prepare myself if that incident happens? Or if there are any nuclear plants or factories in the neighborhood, what could happen if there's a storm? If there's even a earthquake, or again, if there's a hurricane or tornado, what are the circumstances that could happen if that affected or that did some damage to that nuclear reactor or that certain type of factory that's in your neighborhood? How can I prepare myself for whatever may happen to that? Because that, if that is in your neighborhood or in your town, it will certainly affect you. And so you could be evacuated or could have some detrimental issues with any of the chemicals or anything like that was going on that could seep into the ground and then affect the water. There's a lot of things that you can really get a good sense of what you need to prepare for if it's something that affects you locally. Now, globally, it's a whole other different story. But again, I think it's something that you should, everybody should start to look at least just do some research. And that way then you can better prepare for what you need to do within your own hometown. Lucy, are you there again?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. The one thing I did want to say, going back to the faith issue, it's not necessarily a faith in a higher power. It's also faith in yourself. feeling confident, talking about knowing that you've at least done research, that you're prepared to a point. And it doesn't mean that you have to have all the water and cans of food and stuff. I mean, yes, you it's a good thing to have, but you got to have faith in yourself. If you don't feel like you can do these things and go through it, then you're going to be lost. You really are.
In times of horrific incidents and stuff like that, and occurrences that may happen, you really tend to find out who is the leader, who's the follower, and who's the one that is just going to flat out not be there, for you. And you can really pick those people out. And it's kind of morbid to think that way, but you may want to sort of think about that too. Just like what you were saying, have faith in yourself. Who can you have faith in outside of yourself? Who is that person that you can rely on truly in instances of, disasters that, big or small disasters? Who's the person that you know that you can go to? And I think, playing out a scenario in your mind should be what you would also be doing along with, stocking this, bug out bag. Think about that person or those people that that you can rely on, that you can go to. Maybe it's your wife, your husband, your family unit itself, or if there's a friend that you have or coworker, whatever it may be. Who's that person? And I think don't lose sight of that. I think it should be even written down on a piece of paper so that just in case, you've got that information there with you. So if you can't really rely on yourself, or you need extra strength and you don't, or you do have faith or you don't have the faith, that, you can lean on someone and have that, that person that you can be sort of, I guess dependent on for a little bit. You shouldn't be dependent on people for the entire time or for your whole life, but there's somebody that you can go to.
Well, you learn a lot about people during times like this. You really do.
Yeah.
I mean, you know who you can go to. You know who your go-to person can be. So
right.
It's something to think about. It's not a pleasant thought, but it is something that is there, something that can happen, and it's something everybody needs to at least kind of address maybe once or twice. Just like we said, I mean, anything can happen. And it doesn't have to be something major. It could be something minor. I mean, if all the light bulbs in your house all of a sudden went out, would you be able to see? Do you know where your flashlights are? Do you know where an extra key is? How many times have you locked your keys in your car? What happens then? Do you have an extra set of keys? Little things. And these are things that happen every single day.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of these Doomsday Prepper shows and other shows, not just Doomsday Preppers, but other shows about the whole prepping idea. And some folks really go, above and beyond. I mean, completely above and beyond. I don't know if I can get into that level. And I guess at this point, I don't think myself I can comprehend thinking that way. And this show is not about depressing people, and it's not about, it may be that way, it may sound that way, but it really is the opposite. It's really strengthening people. It's really giving people the knowledge of what they can do in times when, there's uncertainty, whatever it may be. This should be not something that you fight or you put down or that you ignore. I really do think, and I'm not, standing on my soapbox preaching this, I think it's something that everybody should just, sort of wrap their heads around and understand, because of what's been going on all over the world within recent years, that anything can happen. And you should really prepare yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually. And I love that he put that on the cover of his book, because it sums it all up. You there, Lucy? Okay, I keep losing Lucy. I don't know what's happening to you.
Okay,
all right.
on.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hello.
Why don't you get on your cell phone?
Okay.
Are you there, Lucy? I can hear her shuffling. You putting on your headset, Luce?
Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
All right, stay on that
Hello?
phone because you seem to be getting knocked off on your other one.
Yeah, Blog Talk keeps dropping. I can hear you, but Blog Talk keeps dropping my my audio. It doesn't let me talk. But okay. See, I was prepared. I had my cell phone ready.
All right, why don't you get into what we normally do towards the end of the show?
Okay. The Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week. And this week, our Paranormal Radio Review Fan of the Week is Rodney Lawrence of Goddard, Kansas. Just a little bit about Rodney. He likes Chuck Norris, likes The Voice, the Huffington Post Weird News. He likes Delta Burke, Dr. Oz, and, of course, he likes Paranormal Review Radio. Thank you very much, Rodney, for being a fan. We love you.
Yeah, congrats. And you know what? I have to agree with him. I really do like the Huffington Post Weird News. They really have some weird news, and a lot of the times I've taken some of their stuff and posted it on our Facebook. They really find some really crazy, weird, and a lot of paranormal news. So props to them for actually putting that on, because not a lot of mainstream media has a section like that. So good for Huffington Post.
Okay. Let's see. You know what? We've been talking all about this. You know, we're watching the news, we read online, we listen to the radio about things that can happen in the blink of an eye. And sometimes they seem far away. But you know what? In reality, it could happen to you. And would you be able to survive? Now, whether you've thought about it or not, we hope that tonight's show has given you kind of a blueprint for what you need to do and what you need to do to keep yourself and your loved ones safe and sound if something ever did happen. Being prepared for the worst is the best gift you can give your family now and anytime. We want to thank Jay. Are you there? We want to thank
I'm here.
Jay and Holly Blevins for stopping by and joining us. Now, you know, it's not all gloom and doom, kids. In fact, next Friday is December 21st. And if the Maya were right, no matter how much you prepare, the end is coming. So what can you do? Party. And that's what we intend to do. Next Friday night, you are all invited to come and spend the last night on Earth with all of your friends and, of course, your favorite online radio show, Paranormal Review Radio. Yes, it's our end-of-the-world party. We're going to talk about all of the prophecies, what we think about it, what we think it means, and we're going to have a few laughs. We plan on having some fun that night. So get your favorite drink, log into chat, and get ready to call into the show and get ready to go out with a bang. Now, of course, if the world doesn't end, it is the perfect excuse to get liquored up and rowdy. So I do want to thank you all. We want to thank all of you out there. You are the best fans on the planet. Anthony, thank you so much. I do want to say that I loved every minute that I was in New York City last weekend, and I can't wait to go back. So until next week, peeps, have a paranormal week, and good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio.